Now to the thousands of children who have been separated from their parents along the southern border and packed into dozens of shelters ever since the Trump administration announced a zero-tolerance policy that separates undocumented parents from their kids. The number of kids in government custody has spiked. Right now, the HHS is housing more than 11,000 migrant children, and that number is getting bigger every day. In fact, those shelters are so packed right now that the government is reportedly looking into building, talking about budgets, building tent cities to accommodate the overflow. MSNBC's Jacob Soboroff got an extraordinary firsthand look at one of those shelters, a converted Walmart known as Casa Padre. Jacob, talk us through this. I read your Twitter feed last night, and it was stunning. Some of these kids are 10 years old, and the images that we've seen, I know you couldn't bring any cameras in. You were not allowed to tape any of it. Anything we've seen, the government has provided. This doesn't feel like we're in the United States.
Yeah, and thanks, Steph, because I saw that you shared that last night. And this is a story that needs to be told and a story that needs to be shared. I've been inside, federal prison. I've been inside county jails. They call this place a shelter, but effectively these kids are incarcerated inside here. There's over 1,400 kids that go to sleep every night inside this former Walmart, and there are more children in there now than there have ever been before. The Department of Health and Human Services invited us inside because I think they wanted to show us, relatively speaking, how good the conditions are, I guess you could say. I mean, there are licensed professionals in there that are taking care of the children. There are not cages. There are not fences that have been described at some of the Border Patrol station. But the reality is these kids, and an increasing number of them, are alone because they were ripped apart from their parents because of the zero-tolerance policy from the Trump administration. We're looking at some of the pictures right now, but they walk out there on the yard, and they're only outside. We're showing the outside pictures. They're only outside for 2 hours a day. They're inside a former Walmart 22 hours a day for around 2 months, if not longer. It is jail or prison-like conditions without the cells is the best way that I could describe it to you.
What was the environment? What was the tone when you and those kids looked at one another?
Well, check this out. So when you go in, an official from the shelter says to me, please smile at these kids. They don't see people from the outside all that often, and they feel like animals in cages being looked at, which was shocking to actually hear from them because there aren't cages in there. But that's the vibe. That is what these kids are going through on an everyday basis. It's organized chaos, I guess, is how I would describe it. I mean, they have structured time to do everything, but it's a bunch of 10 to 17-year-old boys without parents or family, and it's one staff member at the shelter for every 8 kids. So, I mean, just by the virtue of the numbers, it's an overwhelming experience in there, even though they're going to classes 6 hours a day, and they get to go outside 2 hours a day, and they go to meals on rotating schedules 3 times a day. It's bleak, honestly, is how I would describe it.
Well, what's the plan? Where are they supposed to go from here?
They're supposed to be matched with a sponsor, and then the sponsor is supposed to pick them up, and then they go to immigration court hearing. And we know that many of the sponsors don't show up for that immigration court hearing. The change now, again, in this self-inflicted crisis, as our colleague Julia Ainsley has put it by the Trump administration, many of these kids, an increasing number, are unaccompanied minors that are ripped apart from their parents. So their parents are actually in federal prison. They got to figure out where their parents are before they're able to reunite with their parents and get out. And then once they get out, they don't know if they're going to be deported, all because of this new policy by the Trump administration that's designed, I should say, to deter people from even trying to get into the country, which, critics say doesn't even work.
My goodness. All right, Jacob, stay with me. Extraordinary reporting. I really appreciate you doing this. This is a story that needs to be told. I want to bring my panel in. Robert Costa, national political reporter for The Washington Post, also the moderator of Washington Week on PBS. Jonathan Capehart of The Washington Post, where he's an opinion writer, and my old friend Brendan Greeley, editor of the Economic Research Note. All we know so far. Robert, I got to go to you first. Why? I don't even understand why this is happening.
He doesn't get a lot of attention, but think about who's still inside of the White House. Stephen Miller, and you, of course, have President Trump as his boss, and they believe in hard-line conservative immigration policy. So as much as congressional Republicans and some moderate Republicans on Capitol Hill are talking about taking action on DACA or moving forward to a more centrist position on immigration, this administration this White House continues to push for these sorts of policies.
What is this immigration problem that they're talking about so much? Because that's what I don't understand. There are these two narratives out of the administration that I'm confused by. On one hand, the president, greatest jobs number ever. Look at us out there, full employment, beautiful, love it. And on the other, look at those Mexican immigrants stealing our jobs. So which one is it? If these Mexicans are coming in here stealing the jobs of the forgotten American, how is it that everybody seems to have a job?
That's a rational question that deserves a rational answer. There isn't one, because there's no rational policy here. Ultimately, this is what is happening in Jacob's report, and I'm so glad that he's been all over our airwaves talking about this. This is an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Watching these pictures, watching Jacob's report, listening to what he's reporting, that's not the America I know. I'm wondering, where is the shame? Where is the outrage from Capitol Hill about what's happening? Where are the calls for hearing? Where's the righteous indignation? Where is the party of family values?
Nancy Pelosi said, where are people of faith? Okay, but for a completely perverse moment, take humanity out of it. Brendan, let's go economics. You do have 6 million people in this country that do not have jobs. You have lagging wages. Those people need to get retrained. And look at the amount of money that has being spent fruitlessly on this for no reason. It solves no problem.
I'm actually even slightly more cynical than you are about this, if that's possible.
I'm not cynical at all.
Which is, I think that we're carrying out a policy now that is perfectly designed to depress wages in America. So what we know about immigration, 11 million undocumented immigrants is the best guess that we have, is that it's lack of documentation that drives down wages. There's about a 20% gap between lack of documentation and immigrants who are documented. There's almost no gap between documented immigrants and naturalized
Make it clear,
citizens.
when you have no papers, you can be paid almost nothing.
100%. Welcome to the meatpacking industry, right? So that's how that works. So what we've done now is we've made it even more difficult for people to be undocumented in America, which gives their employers even more pressure over them. And my question is, if we really want to solve this problem, where are the arrests of the employers? Right? Why is there not a raid on absolutely anyone who might possibly employ an illegal immigrant, and why aren't they being arrested and separated from their families? Right? If we want to solve the problem that is the wage differential that might be driving down wages, it's possible that it is, let's actually solve the problem. And I think that what we're seeing right now, is a lack of honesty in America about who does the jobs in America.
This is a great point. Jacob, I want to bring you back in. You were saying earlier there are more kids expected. As this backlog grows, how's the court going to keep up with this?
Yeah, it's already a problem. You have these massive court cases where you have 70 to 100 undocumented immigrants at the federal courthouse coming in at a time, and then these people are remanded by the judge to the U.S. Marshal Service, and they go into federal prison. And I talked to somebody down at the courthouse the other day, and she said, "quote unquote," it's ridiculous how many people are coming in here, and it's just not sustainable. Steph, I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier. I mean, the president's justification for doing all this stuff. Undocumented people are bringing drugs. The violence is pouring across the border. All you got to do is look at the reports from our own DEA that says spillover violence is not a credible threat in the United States, despite the fact that there's drug war violence that happens on the other side of the border. I've been down there. I've seen it. They talk about drugs that are coming. We need a wall to put up a wall to stop these people from coming in. Drugs come through the legal ports of entry. And then when you talk about people coming in from work, the Border Patrol chief in this sector, Manny Padilla, told me half of the people that are coming in here are not coming as economic refugees or migrants. They're coming to seek asylum from dangerous street gangs like MS-13 or the 18th Street Gang, which, by the way, Jeff Sessions says there's a culture of... Yeah, he says there's a culture of violence in Central and South America. MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang were created in Los Angeles and deported to those countries, and that's what people are fleeing from.
Wow. All right, Robert Costa, you're saying look inside the White House and pointing to Stephen Miller. Let's go outside the White House. Corey Stewart, anti-immigrant platform wins in Virginia. Stephen King retweets a neo-Nazi. Paul Ryan undercutting a DACA solution. Steve King. and you got Paul Ryan undercutting a DACA solution. So you can point to Stephen Miller, but where's Congress?
Where's the Republican Party? We have a front page story, my colleagues and I, in today's Washington Post about how President Trump has a total grip over the GOP. And if you think immigration policy is going to change at all, think again. Inside of the White House on Capitol Hill, they're already preparing this fall with the upcoming spending bill to have a major showdown over the border wall. They're looking to ramp up on these sorts of immigration policies, not wind down.
How does he have a total grip? Merely because we look at primaries and a guy like Mark Sanford doesn't win? Okay, guess what? He maintained his pride. If the Washington Post asked you to do something reprehensible, you'd say no. I existed before you. I will exist after you. The Republican Party is just saying, I'm going to keep on rocking under this.
Yes, no, that's exactly what they're saying. And keep in mind, the loss of Mark Sanford, Congressman Sanford, is huge because it's not like he was a middle of the roader or someone who sometimes voted with Democrats and sometimes with Republicans. This guy was a not a far right, but a conservative's conservative, a Republican from South Carolina. You open up the dictionary to Republican, his face, among a lot of others, used to pop up. And he got
You have
defeated.
a pop-up dictionary at home?
Just about Republicans.
Maybe. Yeah,
That's a really exciting dictionary.
But, you know, in the three, you mentioned three names, Stephen Miller, Steve King, and Speaker Ryan. I'm going to
Corey Stewart's in there, too.
Right, and Corey Stewart. I'm going to leave off Speaker Ryan. With Stephen Miller and Corey Stewart, what we're talking about are people who are pushing white supremacist ideas. That's why immigration is being pushed so hard. When the Republican Party can rally behind, in Virginia, Corey Stewart, a white supremacist, one, we shouldn't be surprised because the President of the United States ceded the moral authority of the Oval Office by siding with white supremacists in Charlottesville, which is coming up on the year anniversary in 2 months. So the fact that Mark Sanford got defeated, the fact that Corey Stewart won shows that, yes, Robert is right. Our story is right. This is now no longer the Republican Party. It is the party of Donald Trump.
Many sides. He said the same thing to Bret Baier when asked about Kim Jong-un and human rights violations. Yeah. Many people do lots of bad things. Well, no other country does things to their people as bad as North Korea. Brendan, last point.
We keep talking about immigration policy. I want to make clear that what's happening there on the border is not policy.
Thank you.
It is theater. If we were honest with
whom?
I don't know, but evidently they seem to know their own voters. They seem to know their own voters because they're popular with them. I don't know.
And what kind of theater?
But it's not policy. We need to openly and honestly address immigration policy in the United States. Do we need a guest worker program? It's not my preference, but we need to talk about it. This is not policy. This is arbitrarily detaining people who are applying for asylum. They're not even economic illegal migrants. They're applying for asylum, and their children are being torn from them at the border as they're arrested for what is, by the way, a misdemeanor, crossing the border. It's incomprehensible to me, but let's not call it policy.
You say for whom? The voters, the Republican voters who voted on Tuesday night and elected Corey Stewart as their nominee and kicked out Mark Sanford. That's for whom.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.